Good morning. I want to thank y'all for being with us today. You know, one thing I've realized in the 7+ years I've been here is I'm not near as funny as I think I am. And when people laugh when you say that, something like that, because you finally got it. So just bear with me and fake laugh, okay? There's a little boy. He was once very afraid of the dark. And one night, his mom told him, said, I need you to go out on the back porch and I need you to get the broom. And the little boy was terrified and he looked at his mother and said, Mama, I don't want to go out there. It's dark. The mother smiled and said, son, you don't need to worry about that because Jesus is there. He'll take care of you. He'll protect you. And the little boy just stood there and he stared at his mother for a minute. And he's processing what she's saying. And he kind of sighs. And he kind of walks back to the back door. And as he's walking, he turns around and he said, Mama, are you sure Jesus is there? She said, yes, son, I'm sure. Jesus is everywhere. He's always ready to help you. And so the little boy ducks his head and he goes back and it's pitch dark in the back and he cracks open the door just a little bit and he says, Jesus, are you there? Crickets, nothing. So he clears his voice and he says a little louder, he says, Jesus, my mama told me that you were everywhere, so if you're really there, would you just please hand me the broom? Thank you for the pity. Wow. I think a lot of times in our life, the reason that we can get so frustrated and so discouraged, maybe even depressed at times, is because we are really trying hard in our lives to deal with all the stuff that life throws at us. And sometimes, if we're honest, we can get to the point where we might even think, I just don't know if there's anybody that can help me. So that's why we have entitled this series, So Help Me God. Because we've all had those times in our lives when we have realized, God, if you don't help me, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, it's interesting here in America. We have a custom that no other country in the world has. So many of the oaths that we take end with those 4 words. So help me God. If you've ever been in the military, served in the military, you're going to take an oath and you're going to end with the 4 words when you enlist, so help me God. And presidents, when they take the oath of office, they will say those 4 words, so help me God. And if you've ever testified in a court of law, you're going to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Say it with me. So help me God. Right? So what I want us to do just for the next couple of weeks is talk about some areas in life where I know that I need some help. And I thought maybe you might too. You know, there's a lot going on in our world right now. A lot. There's been a lot going on in our world, right? And there's some things that we're all concerned about. I mean, you look at your family or you look at the community or you look at the country or the world, and there's all kinds of things that you can find that are very concerning. And I get that. But I want you to know, as followers of Jesus, Jesus tells us that you can never be his follower and make a case for worrying. Worry is something that Jesus addresses head on. And if you've got your Bibles today, we're going to be in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6, starting in verse 34. It says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So church, I want you to know, as simply as I can put it, if you're a follower of Jesus today, we need to stop worrying. And if you're here today and you need to come to Jesus, he invites you. I'll admit, the words I just said are a whole lot easier to say than they are to do, aren't they? It's real easy to say, you know what, we need to stop worrying. And that's easy to do, but it's a whole lot harder to actually overcome worry, isn't it? So today I just want to share with you 3 biblical steps for us to take with us to try to help us with the things that we worry about. And I know these are going to sound really simple, but I'm going to tell you, if you will put these things into practice, I can promise you from experience, they are very effective. Number 1, thank God for yesterday. Before we actually get into what Jesus said, I want you just to think about how you could use your past experiences to help you in both your current and your future things that will come up when it comes to worrying. Let me ask you, just in case anybody else here today might be worried about tomorrow, or might have some worries about next week or next month. Maybe you're here today and you're worried about how you're going to make that next payment, how you're going to pay that next bill. You're worried about that doctor's report. Whatever it may be that you're worried about right now, let me just ask you this one simple question today. You're still here, aren't you? What I mean by that is you have made it this far. You're still here. So whatever you've worried about in the past, up until now, whatever it's been, you've survived it. And sure, you may be a little bruised, and you may be a little battered, but you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still talking. You have made it this far. You know, when Moses was leading God's people toward the promised land, they lived through a lot. If you sit down and you start reading that story about all the things these people lived through, it's just amazing. And they come to this point where, at least in their own minds, they're pretty real uncertain about what's fixing to happen. So if you've got your Bibles, flip back to Deuteronomy 1 and verse 30, and let's look at what Moses tells God's people. He said, "The Lord your God, who is going before you, will fight for you as he did for you in Egypt, before your very own eyes. And in the wilderness, there you saw how the Lord your God carried you, as a father carries his son, all the way you went until you reached this place." Moses realizes that the people are worried. So what he does is he takes them on a real quick trip down memory lane. And he tells the people, let's just quit worrying about tomorrow. And let's not even think about today for a second, but let's just go back to yesterday and let's just remember what God has already done for us in the past. He reminds them how God parted the Red Sea. He reminds them of how God destroyed the Egyptian army. He reminds them of the wilderness, how God gave them manna and they didn't even have to bake it every morning. And how he gave them quail at night and they didn't have to hunt it, clean it, cook it. God gave it to them. And he said, just remember, for 40 long years, whether it was food, water, shelter, whatever you needed, God came through for you every time. So Moses' question was this: if God has taken care of you yesterday, don't you think that he can take care of you today? And I think that's a great question for us to evaluate. some 700 years later, God says exactly the same thing to the nation of Israel through a prophet whose name is Isaiah. In Isaiah 46, in verse 3, says, "Listen to me, you descendants of Jacob, all the remnant of the people of Israel, you whom I have upheld since your birth, and have carried you since you were born. Even in your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you, and I will sustain you, and I will rescue you." Here, God's fast forwarding to the end of life. When you're about to draw your last breath, and He says, "Before you were born, I was there taking care of you. And now that you're alive, I'm here taking care of you. And when you come to the end of your life, I will be there to take care of you also." And I don't know, maybe you're here today and you feel like you're living out every day of your life with an Egyptian army behind you bearing down on you, and you look forward and the Red Sea is standing right in front of you, and you're worried. And if that is where you are today, then I just want to challenge you today to just take 1 second and just thank God for yesterday. Just take a little bit of time and remember how faithful God has been in the past. And then realize He is also going to be faithful in the present and in the future. So the first thing we have to do is thank God for the past. And the second one is we have to turn to God for today. Look back at Matthew 6. Matthew 6 and verse 25 says this: "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life and what you will eat or drink, or about your body or what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes?" And then skip down to verse 31. Jesus says, "So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear?" And then in verse 34, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." It's so important. Jesus says it 3 times. Do not worry. Do not worry. Do not worry. And of course, when Jesus is talking about worry here, He's not talking about yesterday, because as much as we sometimes want to live on all the yesterdays of our lives, yesterday is gone. Jesus is talking about today and tomorrow here. And how I know that He's talking about today and tomorrow is because that's where worry lives. Worry lives in today and tomorrow. You see, it's impossible for us to worry about yesterday because it's already gone. So when we worry, we're worrying about today and we're worrying about tomorrow because we act in the present and then we think about the future. Worry is all about today, and it's what's going to happen tomorrow, because that's just how worry works. We worry today about what's going to happen tomorrow, and Jesus is saying, you got to take care of today. You got to take care of today before you can ever even start to think about tomorrow. In other words, Jesus is saying, since the only day you can take care of is today, then there's only one question to ask. How do I depend on God just for today? Because we know we can't worry about yesterday. It's already gone. And why would we worry about tomorrow? Because it's not even here. And I'll tell you the one thing I'm absolutely certain about when it comes to tomorrow. It may not ever even get here. It may not ever even happen. So if yesterday is gone and tomorrow may never be, the question has to be, how can I trust God for today? Jesus gives us 2 simple illustrations of birds and flowers to prove how we can actually depend on God for today. Matthew 6, verse 26. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet our Heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Let me ask you this, has anybody ever seen a worried bird? I had one nearly fly right into our windshield, and it didn't have a care in the world. Wasn't worried about it. Have you ever seen a bird huffing and puffing and sighing and frantically pacing back and forth on the dirt with its wings crossed behind it, looking down and shaking its head? Did you know that there has never been a bird in medical history that has ever been treated for hypertension? Did you know they don't even have blood pressure pills for birds? What Jesus is saying here is worry is worthless. It's worthless. And if God is going to take care of the birds, don't you think he's going to take care of you? Here's the application. Take whatever it is that you're worried about right now and turn it over to God. And remember, God has taken care of you. And God is taking care of you. Realize God has your back. And he is more than capable to handle whatever it is that has you so worried. God handled everything yesterday. He will handle everything today. So thank God for yesterday and then turn to God for today and just stay focused on today, because today is all you got anyway. So if I can thank God for yesterday and I can turn to God for today, let me ask you this as we close today. Is there any possible reason, if those two are true, why I can't just go ahead and trust God for tomorrow? Matthew 6 and verse 33. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will have enough. For tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So here is Jesus's prescription for worry. Substitute worship for worry. Jesus says, seek first his kingdom. What does that mean? Well, what that means is when we will focus our attention on worshiping the God who made us, the God who loves us, the God who cares for us, and the God who can handle absolutely anything that you're worried about. If you will do these things, then I promise you that when you begin to worship God, that ghost of worry will disappear quickly, more quickly than you could ever even remember what it was that you were worried about. You see, yesterday's gone. No matter how bad you may want to, you can't change it. It's gone. And tomorrow is a maybe, because we can't touch tomorrow. So all you can do is be present in the present. That's why I love this definition that I came across of worry. Worry is the interest we pay in advance today for the trouble that may not even come tomorrow. Zig Ziglar once said this: 90% of the things I worried about in my life never happened. And you know that's true because the interest that we pay in advance for the trouble that may never come tomorrow is worry. And here was my personal favorite, probably my favorite philosopher that I've ever read. And it'll tell you how much I read when I tell you, because it's pretty deep. And it was by Yogi Berra of the New York Yankees. And Yogi said this: "It is tough to make predictions, especially about the future." You see, you can't really predict the future because you don't even really know if there's going to be a future. If you don't believe me about how difficult it is to predict the future, then I'll come up after we get through the church and I'll show you my college basketball playoff bracket. I had every one of them right the first day until University of Texas won. If you believe that, I got some oceanfront property that I'll be happy to let you have pretty cheaply too. I had to get one shot at that school in Austin. First thing we got to do, if we're going to actually deal with worry in our life, we got to leave tomorrow alone. We got to get tomorrow out of our windshield, because when and if tomorrow does come, God has already promised, I'm going to give you the strength, I'm going to give you the grace, I'm going to give you the wisdom that you need for tomorrow, when and if it does happen. But for today, you've already got all of that. God's granted you the peace for today. And say something comes along your way and worry attacks your heart. Maybe the doctor sees a spot. You just got a pink slip from your office. You just found out that your spouse is having second thoughts about your marriage. What are you going to do? What are you going to do if that happens? You've lost your job. You may have cancer. Your marriage is on the rocks. So what are you going to do? Well, I can tell you what you're going to do. You're going to do one of two things. You're either going to pour all this bad news into this big bowl that we call worry, and you're going to stir it up, and you're going to begin to take some small bites of it, and you're going to eat it and eat it and eat it till you're sick of it, and then you're going to eat some more of it. And all the while you're doing that, you're drowning in the sea of defeat and discouragement. But you can still do that. Let me ask you this. Is that going to take care of your problem? No. Is it going to make you feel any better about the situation? Absolutely not. But you can do that. Or you can give it all to God and say, God, there ain't no way I can even begin to handle all this. And I'm not even going to try, so here, I give it to you. Let me show you what I mean. I should have made y'all all set up. I started to put this on the screen for those of y'all that sat at the back so far that you can't see. Everybody see this? I see some of you squinting. This is a golf ball. Okay? You know how much this golf ball's worth in my hands? About $3 until I hit it into the weeds and can't find it. And if you've played golf with me, you know that's going to happen there about every time I swing. But you know what else is true about this golf ball? You put this golf ball in Tiger Woods' hands, and all of a sudden it becomes worth $800 million. Same golf ball, right? How about this one? Since they finally came to an agreement. Baseball, right? This baseball is worth about the same, maybe $6 because of inflation, maybe, I don't know. That's about all it's worth in my hands. But you put this same baseball in Clayton Kershaw's hand, and all of a sudden it becomes worth $120 million a year just to throw it. One more. See these spikes? You know what these are worth in my hands? absolutely nothing because I can't build nothing. If I'd been Noah, we had all been in trouble. But you know what? These spikes in the hands of Jesus are worth all eternity. It's all whose hands they're in. So if you take every concern, every worry, every anxiety, every fear, every storm that you face, you can put every one of those in God's hands. And you can put them in God's hands because not only are his hands big enough to hold them, his power is big enough to deal with them. And when you take your worry and you turn it into worship, God can then take your problems and turn it into a peace that passes all understanding. The question is, as God has left it for us in everything that we face in life, is what are you going to choose? What are you going to choose? Jesus offers his invitation today. If you need to come to him, he invites you to do that while we stand and sing.